This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. And welcome into episode number 115 here on the Huskies Warming House Podcast. Myself along with Nick Maxon. Nick, shut up. I don't know what you're laughing about, but shut up. Welcome to the show.
You know exactly what I'm laughing at, but that's fine. You're laughing at how you thought the Rangers were going to win this series, and that's not what's happening. But anyway.
Oh, I thought you finally saw a mirror for the first time today. Anyway.
I wouldn't laugh. It just shatters. But anyway.
You know who really needs to look in the mirror is the New York Rangers. You're right. Other than that, we're going to be looking forward and looking ahead to what is going on in the world of hockey. A fair amount of signings, coach firing as well, too, that kind of came out of left field. We'll talk a little bit about that to start our show in the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup and Center SCSU News and Notes. Main portion of the show, it's going to be all things Stanley Cup round number 3 heading into the Cup final. Does Tampa pull it off? Will the Rangers come back? We'll have to see. And what does the Stanley Cup final look like with either of these teams awaiting the Colorado Avalanche? Also, who's the best team that has been bounced from this year's postseason to not actually win a cup final? Kind of going to be interesting to see what team maybe had a shot that kind of crapped the bed, so to speak, and we might be a little bit closer to home on that one than we think. Our extra ice session is a kind of an interesting one as well, too. We're going to go back historically, as it is almost Stanley Cup final time. And we're going to talk about our most shocking, iconic moments of Stanley Cup finals in the past from 1996 onwards. So we're going to take a look at that and a lot of other things. As always, Nick, we start with Center Ice View News and Notes in the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup. Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup here, Noah. And as you mentioned, a lot of signings, a lot of fire-ins, and, well, actually some fire-ins that I think a lot of people got taken off guard. How about this? Bruce Cassidy in Boston is out after 6 seasons. This one shocked me. I think it shocked you as well, Noah. 245, 108, and 46 in the regular season. From my math, that's pretty good, from what I understand, including a Game 7 Stanley Cup final appearance in 2019. Of course, that coming against the St. Louis Blues for their first and only Stanley Cup final victory. Cassidy has already, as we probably would have mentioned, already engaged in talks with other teams, but was told during his exit meeting that he would be safe for the upcoming season. So obviously not, right? .635 winning percentage is 20th all time. No, I actually want to get your opinion on this because the team was done for a couple of weeks, and you talk about the exit meetings, and I really do think that this was a prominent role in why Bruce Cassidy was let go, because again, we saw the record in the regular season, 245, 108, and 46. It's a hell of a record, over a 600 win percentage. So something wasn't jiving with the current squad. In fact, there are rumors out there that both David Krejci as well as Patrice Bergeron expressed that if Cassidy returned, that they would not return as Bruins. What do you make of the Cassidy firing? Do you really think that it was the players voicing their concerns that led to his departure?
Yeah, it's weird to me. quite obviously. So, taking it with a grain of salt, 70 games in 2019-20, and then 56 the season prior to this one. Nick, some numbers here, because we like numbers here.
You like numbers, shut up.
Yeah, since he started at the coaching helm, I guess he kind of came in tail end of 2016-17. So they had 44 wins that season. They started with Claude Julien and then ended with Bruce Cassidy. Then after that, 50 wins, 49, 44, 33, and 51 win seasons for this team, Nick. I mean, the track record, and in every one of those seasons since he was in there, they lost in the first round, second, cup final, second, and first round. Now, playoff success, notwithstanding, because obviously I think this Bruins team maybe had a core that wanted to go a little bit deeper, especially with the aging Patrice Bergeron. We'll talk about him a little bit later.
Sure.
I don't get this.
I don't either.
With Barry Trotz and the Islanders, you could kind of see a hint of maybe something where it was like they were missing an element of their game, a little bit of offensive punch, a little bit of something that maybe they just want to kind of retool and do a different direction. Bruce Cassidy is truly the complete coach when it comes to the way that he runs his systems, the way that he sets up his hockey team. The Boston Bruins were a well-oiled machine this season, and they have been for the past half a decade. I don't get this move, and I wonder if there's something in Boston where it goes back to the playoff finishes, comparative to the regular season.
Sure.
Other than that, Nick, it's either got to be a locker room issue that we don't know about, a la Mike Babcock in Toronto.
I was just going to say Mike Babcock, right?
Or it could be a management decision just deciding to pull the plug and they want a new facelift and a new fresh face or something like this. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right. And, and again, you talk about the numbers, right? It doesn't appear, at least to me, because if it was a number situation after their exit, generally, if a coach isn't living up to their expectations from management, they're let go pretty soon after their exit, right? Whether it's regular season or playoffs. This took some time. So I really do believe not only I'm not saying that the rumors out there aren't true, but I do think there's some weight to those. And I also do believe the exit interviews are very powerful, especially in the professional league. And I've mentioned this before. We talk about Mike Yeo, who I think is a great X's and O's coach.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible connecting with players. And again, in this day and age, whether it's the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, if you cannot connect with your players, you're just not going to succeed as a head coach or a manager.
What's interesting though, this season, and this season was crazy for a lot of teams in the point values, respectively. This was actually
especially in the East.
This was actually the worst divisional finish for the Bruins in Bruce Cassidy's tenure. They finished third, second, first, third, and then this year fourth in their respective divisions. So
they had over 100 points.
They had 107 points, man. And they were behind Tampa Bay, who I hear they're doing okay. Toronto, who had they been able to get through Tampa Bay, could arguably be in the same position as the Lightning right now. And the Florida Panthers, who
President's Trophy winner.
Yeah, say what you want about their postseason, but they had a heck of a regular season too. So
that's a stacked division from what
the only two teams that bested them in the East on the Metropolitan side, of course, the Bruins in the Atlantic Division, is Carolina and the Rangers, who both had decent little postseasons, so to speak, as well too. So it's a very odd thing. So there's got to be something more to this. And if it's not, it's definitely a GM or ownership just pulling the trigger and looking for a facelift, I think, because it doesn't make sense.
No, and we can speculate all we want, right, Noah? And it definitely sounds more like a locker room issue. Will we ever know? Probably not. But just kind of like Bruce Boudreau and a few other coaches that have recycled, per se, run the league. I don't expect Cassidy to be out of a job very long. In fact, I think he'll be behind the bench as soon as this season. Speaking of behind the bench, or maybe in the front office, right? Montreal, who has had quite the season, going back about 12 months, a Stanley Cup final appearance, and then the opposite. How about this? I think a very good hire for them. 3-time Olympic gold medalist Marie-Philippe Poulin will work for the Habs and a part-time player development consultant. Again, the 31-year-old, I mean, what more can you say about Marie-Philippe Poulin? And I say this as a very big compliment, Noah, because you talk about a name that resonates with Hockey Canada on the women's side. I don't know if there's another bigger name out there right now than Marie-Philippe Poulin. And honestly, we've seen the Seattle Kraken and a couple of the NHL franchises go with. Let's put it this way.
You need to hires that we haven't seen traditionally in the game.
Well, and here's what I mean by that. It shouldn't be keyed as that. These women have paid their dues. They're excellent at their craft, and it's sad that we have to label it as sort of, this new age thing because they deserve to be in the role. Marie-Philip Poulin definitely deserves a shot at the NHL.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that's interesting, you talked about her being the biggest name on the women's side for Hockey Canada. Dare I say, because of the fact that we haven't had NHLers for the past couple of go-rounds in the Olympics, dare I say she's probably the biggest name in international hockey for Canada in general at this current point, and more power to her. I mean, us U.S. viewers definitely know the pain of having her find goals in clutch moments that we didn't expect.
Yes.
When it seemed like Canada was down and out. So, congratulations to her. Good pickup for Montreal. I would say if it wasn't for the 2010 golden goal, Jerome McGinley to Sidney Crosby to beat Ryan Miller, who's also in this list for something else as well, too. Fun fact. She might be arguably the biggest name on that stage. I think she outlasts Brad Marchand of the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. I think if you take out the golden goal, she's definitely maybe her, or if you go back a ways, Haley Wickenheiser. Might be another name that you throw in there. But a lot of good players coming out from Canada, especially on the women's side. And like you mentioned, it is good to see. Both women from the U.S., Canada, and all over the world starting to get into the fold of the National Hockey League and professional hockey in roles that, unfortunately, like we talked about, we haven't seen them in before. So a great pickup for the Canadians.
Really good. Speaking of a pickup, or maybe continuing on, with their contract. How about this? Denis Gurianov and the Dallas Stars. This is a little surprising in terms of the term. Only a 1-year, $2.9 million extension. And I say this surprising because, yes, it was a down year for Gurianov, a 31-point season, was much better a year ago. I think he was a little bit underutilized in Dallas. So maybe a show-me contract, but nonetheless, the 25-year-old get another stint in Dallas, which was lacking some offensive punch toward the end of the end. Speaking of offensive punch, how about we go to the Blue Jackets, the Cannon, right? Jack Roslovic, the former Winnipeg Jet, getting a 2-year, $4 million a year contract extension, 45 points this year. And then how about this? Montreal Canadiens defenseman Chris Weidman, a 2-year deal at $750,000, which is the league minimum, by the way. So he gets a contract also as well. Let's go back to Dallas because there's a couple of Dallas names here that we have to talk about. How about this? Ben Bishop, I should say his contract, going to the Buffalo Sabres. Essentially, I think also a 7th-round pick, I believe, is thrown in this deal as well for future considerations to Buffalo. Mind you, Bishop hung up the pads in December. Basically, I think it's a long-going knee injury, if I recall, Noah. So you talk about cap circumvention, and I say that directly because, well, what else you can do with that contract? Let's be honest. So essentially, Buffalo may be looking to add or be very active in the free agent market, and I think this is a foreshadowing to that as well. I think Buffalo is primed finally to make some noise and finally get back in the playoff hunt. So this is a stepping stone for them. But let's talk about Buffalo in another way, right? How about this? You mentioned Ryan Miller. Number 30 will be retired and headed to the Raptors in Buffalo next season. He's the winningest U.S.-born goalie in NHL history, 391 career victories. Also the all-time leader in games played by an American puck stopper, as you had written in the script, 796 to be exact. The effect that Ryan Miller has had on the game of hockey for the American goaltending prospects, right? I think it's important to point this out, Noah, because the U.S., if you look at forwards, defensemen, and goaltending, we talk about big names from goaltending. U.S. doesn't have a ton here. I mean, I think arguably right now, John Gibson may be the big one. Jack Campbell may be a close second, but in reality, the U.S. is not really known for goaltending development. And so this is a big deal for not only USA hockey, for Ryan Miller, and also for the Buffalo Sabres. This is quite an honor.
Yeah, maybe throw Jonathan Quick in there too, a U.S. born as well. So, it's interesting. You look at the goaltending conversation. How about another guy that maybe could be there in recent years? You mentioned the Dallas Stars. I'm going to backtrack very quickly. Jake Ottinger. He's an RFA this year, as is Jason Robertson. And I think with Gurionov, just to kind of throw this out there, he's an RFA after the upcoming season. So he's only 25, so he's got one more year of that arbitration eligibility. So I think it's buy low, sell high for him, just depending on, they have $19.5 million in cap space to the Stars, but a lot of that might get eaten up with goaltenders and Jason Robertson's contract. So, but you mentioned obviously Ryan Miller, and especially, his dominance. He won a Vezina, I believe in 2009, 2012. He had a year, I think it was 2009-10 is what it was, where he had a .929 save percentage that led him to his only Vezina trophy. But a couple of playoff appearances, couple conference finals appearances from 2006 to 2008. And, in his younger years, especially, he carried that franchise and I don't want to say made Buffalo an attractive place to play. So for a lot of us in our generation, especially the generation below my age group, obviously,
Shut up.
Yeah. Actually Ryan Miller, 43 years of age, but
I know, right? Holy hell.
The younger generation has always seen the Buffalo Sabres and maybe the Jack Eichel era as, the laughing stock of the NHL if the Arizona Coyotes weren't here. But you got to remember, you go back to the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, Buffalo was a hotspot destination for a lot of players. It was rocking. The fan atmosphere was really good. And Ryan Miller and that group with Danny Briere, Jochen Hecht, and Maxim Afinogenov, all of those guys, Thomas Vanek, former Minnesota Golden Gopher, a lot of guys that really made that happen. But Ryan Miller was at the forefront because he was the first goaltender. He played in that outdoor game when he was in Michigan. And then he started, taking all those records, and he was one shot away, quite literally, from winning a gold medal in 2010 with the U.S. So, a lot of stepping stones for a player that, funny enough, who never grew up as a goaltender, was an outskater until age 12, and then actually told his dad, if I get a hat trick this game, can I get some goalie pads? And ended up, I believe, scoring 5 points in that, including a hat trick, and never looked back. So what an impressive career for him. His last game in Anaheim with his parents and family there was so emotional. And yeah, what a stepping stone for young goaltenders. If you are a young listener of this podcast and you've never gotten a chance to watch some vintage Ryan Miller highlights, go back and watch the mid 2000s because it's pretty impressive.
Tyler Ennis, Jason Pominville, Derek Roy, just to name a few, big Buffalo Sabres. I mean, you're right. For the younger generation, they've known as kind of the doorstop. I hate to say it, but Buffalo, and even during this time, Noah, they've been a hockey-heavy market. In fact, if you go back to the playoff television ratings, Buffalo was always in the top 5 in terms of watching. They are a hockey crazy television market. They love their hockey, and it really is, from a hockey fan's perspective, it's kind of been despicable, the fact that they have been in a position they have been for so long. Yes, they try to retool. You mentioned Thomas Vanek, doesn't even former Gopher, why can't I think of his name, go back to that as well. Maybe I'm going nuts on that. Nope, I am definitely going nuts on that. I was going to say, what's his face?
The Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild have had a lot of. You're thinking of Kyle Oposo.
Yes, I am.
Kyle Oposo. Yeah. At Casey Middlestat as well too is kind of the younger blood, the younger generation.
Yes.
A couple of Minnesota Wild trades that have seen that. Of course, Pominville going back, Marcus Foligno coming to the Wild. You had Marco Scandella there for a little time as well too,
and he was a part, I believe, of the acquisition to acquire Jason Pominville, if I recall.
Yeah, and Jason Pominville was an interesting guy too. When he came over to Minnesota, kind of had a slow start, but then it was his age 33 or 34 season where he had a really good season, and Minnesota actually sold high on him, and then he kind of petered out towards the end of his career after that. But it's an interesting story in Buffalo, and Ryan Miller really had his name etched in it. I actually have both him and Thomas Vanek's rookie cards. I actually sealed up in mint condition. So who knows what that might be worth one day? Probably like $6 whole.
Down in basil condition. Talking herbs.
What can I say? But you want to talk about things that really aren't in basil condition, Nick. Hey, we've talked about this. Hockey Canada, once again, just a little tidbit here so people have an idea. Flipping to some legal news. Yeah, remember that thing?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, some of the Hockey Canada higher-ups could soon be asked to answer to the governing body's decision to settle a sexual assault lawsuit in late May. According to Rick Westhead of TSN, who, shocker, he's on
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable job he does. Seriously.
Yeah. Lawmakers could vote as early as this upcoming Wednesday to determine whether to ask Hockey Canada executives to testify before the subcommittee about the abuse allegations and provide evidence regarding the settlement. So we'll keep you tuned if we hear anything about that.
And real quick, Noah, one of the advantages the Hockey Canada has is that, as they mentioned in the article, they're publicly funded partially. So there is an avenue to where there is a sort of an ownership or sort of an onus on the taxpayer to know what happened. This would never happen in the US. So, I mean, and again, going back to our previous conversations, just real short, it appears that my wish of actually getting accountability, or at least bringing to front like what happened here, may actually come true, and I think this is a good thing. And again, Hockey Canada being publicly funded, at least partially, may be the avenue. And I'm glad if it does end up going down that route, that we do finally get some answers.
Yeah, I hope we get some answers as well, too. Second to last topic here in the weekly roundup, a trio of awards getting announced here for some winners in the NHL. Let's start PK Subban, no shock here. King Clancy Award for leadership qualities on and off the ice.
100%.
Noteworthy humanitarian contribution in his community. You mentioned it. You thought he was probably the prime choice again for this one.
Yes,
so congratulations to PK Subban. Sometimes looking a little bit better off the ice than he does on the ice, but that's fine.
Oh boy.
Nonetheless, somebody who edged out Jared Spurgeon for this award and who had a very good year on a team that was not so great. Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets did win the Lady Byng Trophy for the player adjudged to have exhibited the best type of sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct combined with a high standard of playing ability. Minnesota Wild fans go, well, what do you mean? Jared Spurgeon's underrated and he has so much class in this. Yeah. Kyle Connor had 93 points. So he was pretty good.
Yeah. That put him above Jared Spurgeon. And granted, those who think that playoff cross-check, the votes were in before that. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yep. Speaking of votes that have been in on this guy for, guess what? 11 straight seasons as a finalist, winning his record-setting fifth Selke Trophy. Patrice Bergeron, the best defensive forward, did pass Montreal legend Bob Gainey for that record-setting fifth one. Yeah, how about that? 11 straight seasons in which he was a finalist. Calgary's Elias Lindholm and Florida's Alexander Barkov were the other finalists, but were they really the other finalists? I mean,
there was actually. So Eriksson Ek from Minnesota received a bunch of third and fourth place votes. Marcus Foligno also getting some fourth and fifth place votes. So for the Wild, there was some conversation there. I do think that Eriksson Ek is getting some national recognition for his play as well.
If I'm not mistaken, is that not back-to-back years that Eriksson Ek has been in the selfie conversation in fourth place?
Correct. Yes, he's been at least in the top 5 in terms of conversation. Yep. It would not shock me that if the Wild continued to be a playoff contending team, which I think they will be next year, despite some changes that are likely to come. That's a different topic. I do think Eriksson Ek is starting to finally get his name recognized, and well deserving. I think Eriksson Ek could definitely be in the top 3 conversation as early as next season.
Final topic here on the weekly roundup has nothing to do with defense or sportsmanship or leadership with these two guys, but they are good hockey players. Colorado's Nazem Kadri is expected to miss the remainder of the postseason with thumb surgery, though he has not officially been ruled out. He was boarded by Edmonton's Evander Kane, who did receive a 1-game suspension and missed game 4 on that one. We'll have to see how far the Avs go here. It is the Avalanche's first Stanley Cup final since winning it all back in 2001. The 31-year-old is an RF. Is a UFA this offseason. So, he's definitely going to be on a lot of teams' lists, I think. So, we'll have to see how that ends up. On the other side of that previous series, Edmonton's Leon Draisaitl, he played through a high ankle sprain since Game 6 of round number 1 against LA. That's pretty common knowledge there. Darnell Nurse. Torn hip flexor.
Dude, how?
Ouch.
How?
Yeah. Yikes.
Like, how do you even walk?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think he was that great in the series against Calgary and moving into the other series, but now, it kind of goes back to Chris Tanev too for Calgary. You kind of understand why maybe they looked the way that they did. So hopefully good recovery time for Darnell Nurse. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jesse Puljujarvi, who has some contract negotiations with Ken Holland to go through as well. They both have shoulder injuries, and Kailer Yamamoto has a concussion. And welcome into episode number 115 here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. Nick Maxon joining myself, Noah Grant. Nick, This might be the latest we've ever actually recorded a show. We're sitting here on Friday. This show this show is coming out on Saturday. It is 11:37 in the evening. Which actually, so I've been working 8 shifts in 9 days. This is my 1 day off in between hospital work, and this is actually like just the mid morning to maybe approaching noon for my regular day/night, whatever you want to call it. So I will be wide awake all night.
Sure.
Yeah, you not so much. Unfortunately, you got the short end of the stick for tonight. Other than that, how are you doing?
Well, without divulging too much, a little stressed.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's
well, don't be.
Yeah, right.
Duh.
Let me just decide. Anyway, no, honestly, it's okay. At the end of the day, there's definitely some things I've been working on and working through. For the hockey people out there, both on and off the ice, there you go. Yes, not upper, it's not a lower, it's a mid-body injury. Yeah, it's stuck on that. Anyway, so, but anyways, Huskies season was finally posted, so that was exciting news. Also, It sounds like the construction of getting rid of the analog scoreboard and the new digital ones has begun as well. So that's exciting for Huskies fans. For Caleb Peabody and not for Rico Blasi, the season does begin again with St. Thomas. And unlike last season, the Gophers will be sort of the what we call the holiday treat in between the first and second half of the season. So, but I love it. I was going to say, there's one thing I'm excited about. They're keeping the Minnesota flavor, the local flavor, with the non-conference schedule. I think Wisconsin, the DACA, Minnesota State as well.
Well, so, why don't we talk about the schedule? I did find it kind of, since we're here.
How about this? You told me, hey, you know what gets you upset more? If I just interrupted you again.
It's fine. Speaking of interruptions, that was not an interruption. Did you find it humorous? Did you find it humorous? That's a big word for you. Did you find
it's a big word for you anyway.
Did you find maybe I know you are, but what am I? It's interesting.
Call us, gonna cry about it. I don't care.
Did you see the press release for the men's team that they were like, men's team adds trio of transfers? And at first I was like, ooh, like did we miss something? No, it's Dylan Anhorn, Dominic Bassi, and Grant Cruikshank. It's just the official announcement for them. So
yeah,
I thought that was kind of interesting as well. But like you mentioned, the latest news, of course, is Heather Weems heading to the NCHC commissioner spot. But then after that, congratulations to her. Then the men's hockey schedule was announced. So why don't we take a look at it while we're here? So St. Thomas again, October 1st and 2nd, first game again.
They get a week off.
Yeah, so this one is in St. Paul again. So
they do a home and home again. Yes.
Yeah. So
except it's St. Thomas first, I believe, right?
Yeah. Except it's in St. Paul for the first one.
Well, okay, so the XL again because they don't have a rink to play in, but sure.
Yeah, it's cool. And then after that, Wisconsin. This one is in Madison this time. Of course, the Badgers came here last time, so that makes sense.
I love it. I love it.
Then after
establish the rivalry, I love it.
Yeah, then coming here instead of what was last year, Minnesota State Mankato, October 21st and 22nd. That's going to be at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. Bemidji State and St. Cloud the next weekend is a home and home, first in Bemidji, then in St. Cloud. And then we start some conference play. Denver to start November. That one's in Denver. St. Cloud's first conference action is everyone's favorite, Western Michigan. And then we're going to follow
We're not Michigan, so they'll play.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Colorado College, November 18th and 19th. That one's in Colorado. And then North Dakota visits on my birthday, December 3rd, as well as December 2nd. That one's going to be in I know, St. Cloud. And that's kind of the prototypical one, is that's when North Dakota usually visits the first weekend of December. And then finishing off.
Or we are up there. One of the two.
Yeah, and then finish it. Usually the North Dakota one is, I suppose it's gone both ways. And then
don't fuss with me.
And then right before Christmas break, it's going to be Miami that the Huskies will finish with to cap off the first half of the season. Second half starts with a home and home in St. Cloud on January 7th and in Minnesota January 8th. That one,
are Jersey Tugs still allowed?
We'll see. We'll talk to Mike Schmidt since we had him on and see what he has to say. But January 7th and 8th at home series against the Golden Gophers. Then at home the following weekend against Colorado College for some conference action again. Actually, a 4-game homestand. Denver following after that before the first matchup with Duluth. Not until the 27th and 28th of January.
Done that a lot lately, where it's like we don't see Duluth until the second half. We see them twice in a very short span.
So it's been a hot minute though. We're headed up to Duluth for the first matchup this upcoming January.
Well, that makes sense.
We needed some time off from Duluth. I think we've seen them enough over the past couple of years.
That's how they do it. It's just like it's like your in-laws where you just cram them all at once. It's like you get to see them a week out of the year, and it's all 7 days in one short span, and then you get the rest of the 350. What the hell is that? 58 days off. Yeah, sure. Anyway,
too much math. Starting the first weekend of February, Miami does visit St. Cloud. Then a week off for the boys before they head up to Grand Forks to take on North Dakota in the middle of February, and then traveling to Omaha. So a 4-game road swing for the Huskies as well. I believe they have only Omaha and Western Michigan once.
Yep.
And then they finish the season at home March 3rd and 4th.
Against what? Let me guess who.
Could it be the Bulldogs?
I don't know. Geez, we don't see a pattern there at all. Anyway, that's great. I love it. Anyway,
it's going to be amazing. NCHC quarterfinals March 10th through the 12th. Frozen face-off the weekend after, and then the NCAAs get rocking and rolling. So, Nick, anything you want to comment on the schedule? Obviously, I think we're pretty stoked about the fact that the holiday tournament time game is not a holiday tournament time. It's a straight up matchup against the Golden Gophers in the middle of the season.
And again, I'm really excited for the non-conference schedule. I mentioned that last year. I said, you know what, this is fantastic for everybody involved. Honestly, it's great for the fans. It's great for the game. It's great for the teams. Honestly, the really big team that benefits is Wisconsin, because my goodness, they could use a boost. But anyways, no, but come on, don't give me that look. Anyway, but no, seriously, St. Thomas, they're going to be much improved this year. They got a great recruiting class coming in. They're going to be, I believe, a hot ticket item as early as this year. I really think they're going to be a 500 squad. I really do. I think they're going to be that much improved. Wisconsin will be better-esque kind of deal.
How about the fact that the game between St. Thomas and St. Cloud could have a single game higher attendance than any home game for the Arizona Coyotes this season?
You're assuming Arizona's still in Arizona. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, probably. So they're also limited. Don't get me off topic. But anyways, no, honestly, I love the fact that they're continuing the home old WCJ flavor. That to me is the biggest thing. I wanted that from last year because I think it really drew fan interaction for the Big Ten, the CCHA, and the NCHC to have some of those old rivals back. And now that the NCAA has cleared in the rule book that you can schedule other NCAA teams as exhibitions, I think we've actually seen the end of your Alberta's, your Regina. I think you're done with some of those Canadian colleges. I really do. So this is good for college hockey, and so at the end of the day, that's what I'm most excited about. Again, with other than the fact that North Dakota and again, of course, anytime you play Duluth and you get to chat with Scott Stanley, who is a gem of a human being, always great. That's a great matchup.
Yeah, it should be good. Obviously, excited to see how the next season rolls off. Current season going on in the NHL. Game number 6 coming up, I believe, tomorrow night.
Yes, sir.
On Saturday, or what will be today, if you're listening when the show first comes out. Well, you'll probably have the answer within a couple of days.
We'll give them the date, or else they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
That would be the 11th.
There you go.
Hey, yeah. So the question mark here is, Nick, is we're going to have the answer very shortly, or maybe not so shortly, depending on how the Rangers perform in game number 6. So I thought this was interesting. So before we answer the question, does Tampa pull it off in 6 or 7 games, or do the Rangers push it all the way to 7 and get the job done? I thought this was interesting. So John Tortorella actually sat still for 5 seconds and answered questions.
Are you sure it was 5? I thought it was like 3.5.
The Athletics' Joe Smith must have tied him down with a straitjacket. But anyway, he talked about that 2019 series where Columbus did sweep the Lightning, and he said this quote, and I'm going to read it word for word. Just because I thought it was interesting to just hear it raw. So he said, quote, we created a monster. I don't think that it was X's and O's. I think it was a mindset. That 2019 Lightning team was all world when it came into the playoffs, and I don't think they respected us. Sometimes you've got to eat it, and when you eat it, you might still be stubborn and not want to change anything, hinting at when the Lightning lost that series.
Correct.
They ate it and realized they had to change and play a little differently. They changed some personnel, and it's a true credit to their organization that was willing to swallow a little bit of pride and say, you know what, we've got to change. And I truly wonder, this Tampa Bay team has always been good, really kind of going back since maybe the 2014 Stanley Cup final, 2015, where they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Nope. That was who, the Los Angeles. No, wait, 2014.
2015.
You said 14, didn't you?
And then I clarified 2015. 2014 was the Kings. 2015 was that Stanley Cup final because Ben Bishop got hurt in game number 1.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about some more Stanley Cup final history.
I was trying to smoke you, but you didn't let me. Anyway,
in the extra ice session. But here's the thing: Tampa has always been good. They haven't gotten over the hump. Are they back-to-back Stanley Cup champions on the verge of potentially three-peating?
Yes.
If that series doesn't happen.
That's a fantastic question. Since when do you ask detailed questions like this? Anyway,
well, because we got Torts here. He doesn't want fun in the game.
Torts,
he wants the
right.
X's and O's.
There is something to be said there, because mind you, that Tampa Bay winning squad set the record for 62 regular season wins. That team was a hell of a regular season team. In fact, a record-setting one. Yeah. And again, it shows a couple of things. It shows that in the Stanley Cup playoffs, whether it's round 1 or the Stanley Cup final, it does not matter who is there. You have a chance to win every single night. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, no question, after they let's go back to game 1 in that series. No, I think this is important. Yeah. They had a multi-goal lead, and you could see them as sort of essentially put it in cruise control. Columbus said, bleep that, for lack of better terms, and we're not out of this. And they stole the show. They surprised Tampa, and Tampa was like, you guys were dead in the water. What the hell happened here? Yeah. And they came back and won that series. And they did create a monster. And to be fair, there's one thing to awaken the beast, which they did. It's another thing for the beast to learn from their mistakes. And we've seen how many times that an organization has had their wake-up call, per se, but hasn't answered it, right? And it's two ways. And I think that Joe Smith, sort of did this brilliantly, because you had to make some personnel changes, whether it's John Cooper as a coach and maybe some systematic changes, or just how you have to approach late round Stanley Cup, playoff games, or even first round, right? Yeah. You have to understand that every game is a battle, and you have to win every inch of ice. And I think for the Tampa Bay Lightning, when you're that good in the regular season, it didn't matter. You didn't win a single freaking game in the playoffs. That took their record-setting regular season and basically turned it into dust, and no one cares and no one will remember it. And we're already 3 years removed, and that's it. Yeah. So no one knows, and no one cares.
Yeah. So they had a 7.56 winning percentage, which is absurd. They were first in league in goals, and they were 5th in goals against entering that series. Right. Like you mentioned, they dropped that 3-0 lead and lost 4-3 in game number 1. Nick, I'm curious, games 2 through 4, what was the Lightning's goal differential? Do you have any idea in that series?
It wasn't much, if I recall. It was like maybe -4?
-10. They were outscored 15-5. I forgot about this. I forgot
that too.
They lost game 2 5-1. They lost game 3 3-1, and they lost game 4 7-3. Now, granted, a couple of those goals in game 4 might have been empty nets, trying to claw back into that series, but nonetheless, kind of an interesting throwback into history. So they've recuperated, quite obviously. Get it recuperated. John Cooper, for those who were curious about that horrible pun right there. But nonetheless, they are potentially one game away from punching their ticket to their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. The New York Rangers stand in their way. Does Tampa?
4th. Remember, they were there in.
No,
they weren't.
3rd.
18. You're right. Hold on. In 19.
Yeah, there's a button at the bottom that says "Leave Studio." Feel free to hit it at any time.
I will actually.
The question is, do the New York Rangers hit the Leave Studio button, and are they done? Does Tampa Bay get it done in 6? Do they get it done in 7, or can the Rangers find a way through them in 7 games?
They can. Because if you look at the last couple of games, they've been close. I mean, again, Tampa in Game 5 went ahead in the final minute of the third period. It was a deflection off of Andre Palat in front of the net. Again, Mikhail Sergachev, some clutch, right? And this has been the goaltending matchup that we thought we would see, Noah. Shesterkin versus Vasilevsky, both goaltenders coming up big. It's been really fun to watch. This is, again, we looked at this series and we said this has the makings of go 6 or 7 games. We're going to get our wish to at least Game 6. Can the Rangers do it? The answer is yes. It's going to be a tough road. They're going to have to play almost a perfect Game 6. Andre Vasilevsky and the Tampa Bay Lightning at home have been very, very tough to beat. And I think this is where the experience with Tampa, you mentioned going back to the Columbus series, they know that when they had the proverbial beast on the ground to curb stomp the F out of them, honestly. So they have the opportunity, and you don't want to go back to MSG and give the Rangers another shot at this. So it's going to be tough. Now, the kid line for the Rangers is going to be huge in terms of getting them there. That's what Philip Hedl, Lafreniere, and who am I missing? Andrew Kopp. Kopp, yes. They've been very absent in the last couple of games for the Rangers. Gerard Gallant and that vicious forecheck has not had the same punch in the last couple of games. They're going to have to get back to that. And even with Tampa, I mean, geez, Ryan McDonough out for the majority of the third period. In last game, they've been able to survive it. And you talk about, again, going back to the original comment, have they created a beast? Yeah, because it doesn't matter who's in the lineup. It doesn't matter who is not in the lineup. This Tampa Bay Lightning squad can sustain and get over any sort of person that's in or out of the lineup. And they've got themselves in a position who've won 3 straight to go back on home ice in Amalie, a very tough place to play and have a chance to wrap up this series in 6 games. Now, if I don't recall correctly, did somebody on this show predicted Lightning in 6? Who was that?
Yeah, well, here's the thing that's interesting, and it's
not, and I will admit, it's not as clear cut as it is. No, it's not.
But it is underlying statistically. You're seeing the trends in the right direction. Now, last game was kind of an anomaly, but of course, this reference again from the Steve Dangle podcast.
Yes,
going through this series, but so June 1st was game 1 of this series. The Tampa Bay Lightning had 28 giveaways to the Rangers 23. Okay, All right, 2 days later on the 3rd, they had 22 giveaways compared to the Rangers 29, but still quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 days later, Tampa Bay had 6 giveaways.
Yes.
2 days after that, they had 9 giveaways. And then after that, yesterday's game, they had 14 giveaways, but the Rangers had 27. Mm-hmm. So, granted, in some of those games, like one of them, the Rangers had 4 giveaways, and the other one, the Rangers had 3. But you're talking about Tampa Bay, especially in round number 1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, it felt like it took them a while to get going, but really what Tampa also does is Tampa Bay and John Cooper and his staff are so calculating into making the adjustments that had to be made. And there's so much buy-in within that room as to what has to change. And they talked about it going back to John Tortorella's comments about that 2019 series, as he said, our only plan against that high-flying Tampa team was to just try to limit their odd man rushes, their transitional speed, and see if they would get frustrated. And that's all it took for a dynamically offensive team to kind of falter.
Shut down, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're trying to highlight, what are the New York Rangers' strengths? What do they do effectively? And how can you counter that? Because the goaltending battle is what it's going to be. You have 2 great goaltenders. You have so many high-flying weapons. I would dare say that Tampa probably has a little bit more weapons than the Rangers do, but the Rangers have come a long way in such a short span with the signings of Artemi Panarin, Chris Kreider's year that he's had, and so many guys jumping into the limelight. So it's going to be interesting. Game 6, I'm not particularly sure. I'm going to stick with my Rangers because I think that they're gonna get the job done. And no one else is going to get hit in the face when they're walking through the concourse because that's ridiculous.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, if you haven't gotten a chance to see that, definitely go check that out. But I think the Rangers still get it done in 7. Nick, I'm assuming you're going Lightning in 6.
I gotta stick with my horses, bro. And again, on home ice, that's a tough task. And you gotta wonder too. It's not like this was 1-1 then 2-2. This is 3 straight wins for the Lightning, and you gotta wonder where the Rangers' mentality is at. If I'm a Rangers fan, I'm a little bit concerned that way because, and again, it's not like they've been losing by large margins. They've been close games. And it's almost, I think, in terms of former hockey players, like you and I could attest to that, those are almost tougher because it's like if you get your butt whipped, it's like, okay, yeah, that hurt, but okay, let's go back to the drawing board. When it's close, it's like, okay, but what did we do wrong? It was one glance off of it was one bounce, and that was it.
So it should be interesting. Nick, two more questions here in the main portion of the show. Really, what is the Stanley Cup final like for both of these squads against Colorado? And really, moreover, who really has the better chance coming out of this series to take down the Avalanche? Or do the Avalanche have this thing locked up?
Well, first of all, as we know as hockey players, nothing's ever locked in the Stanley Cup final. But this is going to sound funny, but the Rangers actually have a better chance, in my opinion. They're a younger team. They got better legs. I think that their forecheck mimics what Colorado likes to do. You almost have to fight fire with Colorado. I think the Rangers system under Gerard Gallant actually has a better sustainable chance to beat, I think, the high-flying Colorado Avalanche. Now, again, that's the hockey nerd in me, but again, Tampa just it's not like there's no quit in them. It's not like, but they've been there, done that. Now, I don't think they've ever faced a beast that it's going to come down their throat if they end up pulling it off tomorrow, or as Noah Grant likes to say, today, for those who are listening, for Colorado, because again, they're just so high flying. They're just so offensively driven. Now, one thing that's going to hurt them a bit is the absence of Nazem Kadri. My goodness, that's a huge loss down the middle in their second line. You kind of wonder how Jared Bednar and the Avalanche are going to adjust to that. But I do think on paper, at least the Rangers, in terms of just their youth and their speed, especially that kid line. That kid line is so fun to watch. That to me is sort of an X factor. But again, Tampa is proving that, again, smart, good, experienced hockey can sometimes trump that. And you kind of wonder if Tampa's back-to-back cups and the way that you mentioned, they've been able to adjust it and be able to shut down offensive, forces. They did it with Toronto, which leads me to believe, can they do it with Colorado? They probably can. Now, it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series if that's the case, but I don't know. It's going to be tough. And that's what I love about the Stanley Cup final, is that you just don't know. You just don't know. There's no clear-cut favorite, and that's what makes Stanley Cup playoff hockey so intriguing, is that you don't really have, even with Colorado, are they on paper the absolute clear-cut favorite? Probably. But again, experience and bounces and what do the rest call it? Hockey plays?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Sometimes that's just the way things happen. So whoever comes out of that against Colorado is going to have their hands full regardless.
Yeah. Well, just, if the puck's dumped in the corner, if you're an official, just don't kick it to somebody. Right. The interesting thing about this too, you talk about the Nazem Kadri piece. How about if the Lightning do get through this series and they get Braden Point back?
That's huge for them too. And that's the other thing too, is that the Lightning, we mentioned with Ryan McDonough, right? They've been able to win and be successful. It doesn't matter who comes out or who's in the lineup. I mean, they've been able to adjust and adapt to pieces that are missing. And Braden Point, it's funny how, and I think maybe this is a Minnesota Wild fan, like maybe sort of mishap, is that when a Kaprizov goes down, or in the past a Koivu or a Brunette or a, dare I say, Nancy Miadin goes down, it was like, we're done. This is over. Whereas true Stanley Cup contenders can absorb that type of loss. They can adjust and they can go, that's a big piece, but that's where we talked about the Minnesota Wild. The time when Darcy Kemper gets hurt in Game 7, they come back. Nino Niederreiter scores with oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. Why can't I think? I can see his face. Brizgalov. There we go. Ilya Brizgalov. And they go to overtime in Game 6 for Stanchion Gate with Patty Kane, one game away from pushing that second round game to a Game 7. That was the team that you look at on paper. Not that they weren't bad by any means, but there was a team that they were down 2-0 in that series. Mikhail Gramlin scores the game winner to make it 1-0 in overtime in game number 3 at the XL. They push their way. They claw back to a 2-2 tie. They lose Game 5. They win Game 6 decisively at home. They were they did not carry a lead in Game 7 at any point at what used to be the Pepsi Center in Colorado.
until Jared Spurgeon ties it up until Neon Riders game winner in overtime. There was so much about that
from
team.
Danny Heatley of all people.
Yeah, and he also scored in that game as well too. So
Brodziak was the primary assist. Sorry.
Yeah, Danny Heatley had the goal in the second period.
Yep.
But it's interesting that you have so many of these elements that go in. Sometimes there's something to be said with puck luck, and you're feeling it, and good teams find a way and find that luck too. But you kind of have to play with. It's not reckless abandon, but you have to play loose. You have to play in a way that you trust the process. And
yes.
I think for Minnesota sports fans in general, the tension does not allow you to trust the process.
No.
Tampa took a long time for their organization to figure that out. And once they finally figured it out, it's been very effective for them. And I think you look at a team like the New York Rangers under Gerard Gallant, you look at what Gerard Gallant did with the Vegas Golden Knights too.
Wow.
Those are teams that are young teams or, recently coming into their own, and they play a structured and definitive style, but they play it in a way that's relaxed and free flowing. And that's what you have to be too. Now the Rangers haven't gotten bounces in the last 3 games. That's for sure.
No, they have not, for sure.
But beyond that, what got them to this point is, kind of playing with that mentality of being a young guy and acting like you have the swagger to be able to make a play, not overly aggressive and confident, but enough to make a play. So we've seen plenty of teams get burned by that too. So my final question for you, Nick, what team, if you could pick any, West or East, doesn't matter, from the Stanley Cup final that is now currently out, missed their window to win a Stanley Cup this year because they were just that good?
Florida.
Okay.
Now, you want me to say the Minnesota Wild, but screw you. I'm not going to go that route. Which honestly also is in the conversation. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, when you talk about missing a window, right? Florida, it's funny that I mentioned them, and I say that's funny because caution Panther traffic. And yes, for those who live in Florida, that's an actual road sign.
Yeah.
Have you been to Florida, Noah?
Yeah. Well, if you go to Minneapolis, it's cougar traffic, if you know what I mean.
Anyway, I don't go on those websites. Anyway,
farmers only, man.
Oh, good. Oh, goodness. So no, but if you go to Marco Island, if you go across from the highway, you will literally see yellow signs that say Panther. Anyway, I'm overdoing this one, but seriously, Florida, as good as they were offensively, they actually had a lot of red flags for the game. They got down early in games. Yes, they were able to come back, but it's like, this is not a sustainable playoff practice. It was where they just had too many slow starts. So as much as Florida missed an opportunity, I almost want to say that because yes, they're the reigning President's Trophy winners, Noah.
Yeah.
They almost shouldn't be. If you take away the amount of times they had to come back, and when I say come back, it was like 3 or 4 goal deficits they had to come back from.
Yeah.
It gave you some hope as a Panther fan because you go, my goodness, this team can almost score at will, but what the hell is taking you so long to get to period 2 that you're waiting this long, right? And when you get to the playoffs, as you know that you have to, those slow starts, they cost you, and they did cost them in the second round against Tampa when they got swept to the frickin' Gulf of Mexico per se, or in Miami's case that'd be the Atlantic Ocean. Anyways, I know my geography, so but to that same trick, the Minnesota Wild, I think, missed a glorious opportunity. I'm going to go with the number 2 because number 1, you talk about the balance of that roster, very, very balanced roster. You talk about how I think just there was some stubbornness there by the coaching staff to make changes. And it sucks because I don't know what, for those who still complain about Kirill Kaprizov, 7 goals, I think 9 or 10 points total. I think he did all that he could.
7 goals, 1 assist.
Yep. How Kevin Fiala was absent.
Who?
And yeah, right. Who dat? Anyway, new phone. Who dis? His name is not Bill Guerin. Anyway, so he is likely on his way out. And again, I want to bring this guy up too, because how about Matt Dumba too? And I say that not because necessarily he's defensive style, because there was definitely some warning flags about how about over the last couple of seasons since his chest injury, he's not been the same offensive threat either. And you kind of wonder too with Minnesota, because there's such a peculiar situation with the cap recapture penalties with buying out the Suter and Parisi contracts. And again, Bill Guerin has a game plan.
Yeah.
We don't know what that is as of yet, but they missed a glorious opportunity. Now, granted, the way that St. Louis under Craig Berube plays, that's a matchup nightmare for the Minnesota Wild. But regardless, I think after game 3, when they took a 2-1 series lead, they absolved, I think, St. Louis's, I'm going to just run and take your head off type approach. I really thought that was a stepping stone for this organization. I really did. And they just sort of fell flat the last couple of games, and that was disappointing to me. No, I'm curious to know. I know the Minnesota Wild are on your list, but I'm curious if it's another team on your list as well.
So Nashville was not very good.
No.
But if you would have asked me at the end of the regular season, I think if you would have told me at the end of the regular season that this team was not going to win a cup, I think on paper Calgary might have been the biggest disappointment because of the way that they performed in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think if you look strictly from a postseason play point of view, for me, Toronto was the biggest one. And because of the fact that they were one shot away in game 6, 1 goal away in game 7 from tying it, or 1 interference penalty. And,
you just triggered all Canadian fans, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Right. They were such a good team this year, and they were a good team in the playoffs. They didn't choke this year. And we've talked about it so much on this show, but, I would just, as much as I know a lot of people like to give them a hard time, how much would you have liked if it wasn't Tampa Bay against the Rangers, which has been a fantastic series? And to be honest, out of all the teams that have repeated and have a chance to three-peat, if you will, Tampa has been an exciting, fun team to watch. Like, you don't watch them and you don't hate them. You really respect the way that they run their process.
Yes, they do.
But if it wasn't the Lightning, how much would you like to honestly see the Toronto Maple Leafs playing the Rangers right now for Game 6 to go to a Stanley Cup final for the first time since what, 1943?
Big market. This is big market. That would be fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic, honestly. And you're right. Like, if there's one good thing that came out of the East, other besides that every single team that made the playoffs was over 100 points. And we talked about the Bruins and how it's like, how the hell are you 4th in the division? You have 107 points. What the hell?
Yeah.
But going back to it, I mean, as you mentioned, Toronto, oh boy, I know that it's easy to say, well, another first round exit. But again, as you mentioned, it wasn't like
it wasn't another one.
It was not. It wasn't like, what was it back in 2000 and was it 11 when they gave up a 3-goal lead? Was it 13?
Yeah.
3-goal lead again to drop it in game 7. And who would have thought Patrice Bergeron with the dagger into the back of the Maple Leafs? But they really were in it. It was a game of bounces for the Maple Leafs this year. And a big show to that was ownership said, Dubas, you're sticking around. So is Sheldon Keefe. And at least as of right now, granted, free agency hasn't really kicked off yet. We haven't really seen, at least publicly, any indication that major changes are coming. Yeah. And which shows that there's, as Kyle Dubas said at this point last year, I believe in this squad. And I think he's right. I think, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was also going to say, the only change really, it would have been really cool to see Jason Spezza get one last crack at a Stanley Cup too. His only shot, I believe, was 2007 with the Sens. I think he was in the league at that point. So
he was with the Senators. And that was a loss against, was it Detroit?
Anaheim.
That's
07. Ottawa went to the Cup final that year. It was the first time since the mid '90s that two teams who had never been in a Stanley Cup final met each other. The only reason I know that is because Dustin Penner, who ended up being a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, actually played at the same college that I played college hockey in. So kind of cool too. But beyond that,
bro.
Yeah, sweet flex, right? Beyond that, why don't we talk about some Stanley Cup final history? We're definitely gonna head out of the extra ice session. It is after hours. This is the Huskies House podcast after dark here. So we are just after midnight. So technically we're on the same day as show release, Nick. I can now say today.
That's new for you.
Oh, look at that. Well,
edit that crap out.
Yeah, well, it's the F-bombs I had to edit out earlier for those of you who don't know, but nonetheless, it is June 11th. We're going to take a rewind back in history on our extra ice session to talk about some Stanley Cup final history. And welcome into the extra ice session. Myself, Noah Grant, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Maxon, who is in a very cheery.
Who take out the legend part and you got it right, but
yeah. legendary it can be good or bad legends. I mean, legend is legend.
No,
right?
No, legend's usually like a at least synonymous with something good. So man the myth, that seems fitting.
Anyway, things that aren't myth. You know what's interesting? If you go back, so what's not interesting is that there's a Wikipedia.
I go back further than you, so be careful.
Yeah, there. What's not interesting is there's a Wikipedia page for every single Stanley Cup final, just like there is for every NCAA ice hockey tournament that has ever been historically.
And
but
Wikipedia is the epitome for all things that are accurate. But sure,
it's interesting though. If I was a Stanley Cup winner and kind of wanted to read a little bit, if you go through some of those pages, just like a particular years, you can get some little tidbits that like I didn't even know about any of those Stanley Cup finals. You go back and jog your memory, and there's actually some pretty good synopses. What's the plural of synopsis? Synopses of some of these, the different matchups in the different rounds and stuff. It's kind of cool. If you get a chance, just type in like 2012 Stanley Cup playoffs, and it'll kind of give you some information. But what we're gonna do here on this show. We're going to talk about our most shocking or iconic moments of a Stanley Cup final in a specific season or during the run of that winning team in that year, essentially, since 1996. So I do obviously have the list up here. I have a lot of choices, actually. I have a lot of things here, but Are there any that kind of stick out to you first? I mean, I'll kind of go down my list, obviously, but I want to hear yours first, and then I'll kind of pick up some of the spots.
Let's go back to before you were born, which isn't that far. How about 99 and the Dallas Stars fiasco with the Golden Brett in the crease, right? So for those who are like, what the hell are you talking about, Nick? So in today's NHL, if the puck is in the crease, you as a player can be in the crease. Back in 99, that wasn't the case. You couldn't be in the crease as a player for any reason.
Yep.
So it's interesting because he was in the crease with his right skate, then it kind of maybe scooted it out, and then maybe as he jammed the puck in, it was in again. Again, this is coming against Dominik Hasek, the Dominator, and the Buffalo Sabres. We talked about them a couple points in this show.
Yeah.
That was controversial. And mind you, on the ice and during the celebration, it really wasn't mentioned there until like it was coming back for replay, but the league itself really didn't look at that one and really address it. So at least to me, that's a big one. How about this 2000? How about the overtime winner, Jason Arnott, New Jersey Devils, against the same Dallas Stars? A blind backhand pass through the seam, and Eddie the Eagle, what the hell are you doing? But and honestly, it's kind of a blur from there. But how about the most goofy Stanley Cup final 06 Edmonton versus Carolina? That was interesting.
I've got some tidbits about that if we want to run it back here. So we did go from 1996. The reason I picked that year is because that's when I was born. So actually when the Colorado Avalanche beat the Florida Panthers 4-0 in that series, the last time that Florida had actually ever won a game in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I wasn't even alive yet. So how about that one before this year? So I actually have one from 97 and 98, Detroit's back-to-back victories against Philadelphia and Washington. How about the fact that as we go back there, in that summer after 97, it was actually Vladimir Konstantinov and Slava Fetisov that were in that accident along with the team masseuse and that limo injury. And Konstantinov was pretty much on a ventilator and ended up being in a wheelchair. And then the Red Wings win again in 1998, and Fetisov brings him the cup on the ice. I mean, that's chills, an iconic moment as that
means
too.
If you like chills, 01 and Raymond Bourque with the Colorado Avalanche, that's got to be on your list.
Yeah, well, that was pretty good too. I mean, like we mentioned, New Jersey won in 2000, like you mentioned, Jason Arnott. 01 was the Avs. 02 Detroit again. How about 2003 as well? Pushing it forward, the Devils won this series, but Game 6 off the floor on the board, Paul Kariya. Yeah, and that's a moment that's iconic because it would never happen today. It would never even remotely happen with concussion protocol. your personal favorite, I think, 2004, the parallax goal that never actually went in.
Yep.
Marty St. Louis scores the game winner in Game 6 to send it back to Tampa.
And then
for Game 7.
Ruslan Fedotenko, a wild pickup at one point, scoring twice in Game 7 to give Tampa Bay its first ever Stanley Cup. So
yeah, and did you know that year and then the subsequent lockout, that was actually the end of the 2-line pass rule in the NHL?
Yes, it was. Yes, that was also the introduction of the shootout.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? But you mentioned that Carolina series, which was where we were headed. So
yes,
Carolina was kind of a wagon.
Brindamore.
Yeah, and there Rod Brindamore captaining that team. Of course, former St. Cloud State Husky Matt Cullen on that, as well as Brett Hedican.
Who was the Game 6 hero in the East Final for Carolina? Oh my gosh, I hear the call.
The thing that's interesting to me,
it's gonna piss me off. Hold on.
The thing that's interesting to me is Carolina was always a good team. How Edmonton got there was crazy because they
Scott Walker.
Yeah,
That's
Scott Walker.
who it was.
And the Oilers rode on the back of Dwayne Rolison throughout the first 3 rounds of that series, and then he got hurt. Yeah, and then he got hurt, and UC Markkanen was the one that had to come in and finish that series out. Interestingly enough, here's a Wikipedia one here for you, Nick.
Oh boy.
The team that won the opening faceoff in every game of the Stanley Cup final that year won the game.
Cool.
I believe it's the only time in history that that's happened. Interesting. Interesting.
I think it's okay. I'm gonna go on a rant here.
I mean, it's funny, yeah.
Yeah. Are we reaching for that many stupid fucking stats? Pardon me. Yes, you can bleep that out.
Now you're gonna make me work more.
I know. I'm sorry, but okay. but honestly, like, I mean, it's like the same thing in football. Like, oh, the team that
what's a catch? Yeah.
Well, besides that, nobody knows really at this point. But the team that caught the ball at the 20-yard line in the opening kickoff won the Super Bowl.
But if you think about it though,
who cares?
But think about it though. Think about how much that actually probably doesn't happen over a series, like over
it's
a
50-50
over
draw.
a 7-game series.
Either one team's winning the faceoff.
I found it interesting and I enjoyed it.
Okay, cool.
2007, the Ducks beat the Sens. We talked about that.
Is the Red Wings,
Penguins, and then the Hawks.
Penguins.
And I had the Red Wings, Penguins, and Hawks in here solely because of the reason that, do you remember that period of time? Poor Marian Hossa.
Yep.
Yeah.
Went from one team and then he was on the wrong end of both freaking times. That actually was funny to me because, mind you, Marian Hossa and Ilya Kovalchuk were Atlanta Thrashers property at one point.
Yeah.
That was with Dustin Byfuglien. Let's see. Was it Slater? Who was the other big Winnipeg?
Dustin Byfuglien was on that team.
Yes, he was. No, but there was there was a captain for Winnipeg that came over from Atlanta. I'm trying to remember his
Andrew Ladd.
name. Andrew Ladd. No, he was later. It was the original captain. He came from Atlanta. Oh my goodness, that's gonna bug me. Anyway, but my point is, yeah, Marian Hossa on the odd end of the Detroit. Right, because he was on Detroit.
He was on the opposite side of,
and then went to and then Penguin losing to the Chicago Blackhawks in 10. So yeah, just couldn't quite find the right side of the coin there. And then unfortunately, Rafi Torres found the right side of Marian Hossa, but that's a different story. But anyways,
you're not talking about Scott Mellenby, are you?
No.
It's funny. So I searched captains for Atlanta because it's not a long list.
Really?
Was it Steve Staios, Ray Ferraro?
No.
Scott Mellon, Bobby Holik?
No.
Oh, that's it. I mean, Colby Armstrong was technically.
No, it wasn't Colby Armstrong.
Andrew Ladd's been the only one.
No.
Tobias Enstrom. I'm telling you, I'm looking at the list. Like I'm literally looking at the list. And that's it.
And maybe he was an assistant.
I'm looking at the assistant too, and there's nobody here that pops up.
I will know the name when I see it.
Okay, I can read them off for you. Byfuglien, Bogosian.
No, wasn't Bogosian.
Ron Hazy, Nikolai Antropov.
Nope.
The
A-Train, yep.
Nicholas Havlid.
No.
All right, now we're getting back in the 2000s here. Vyacheslav Kozlov,
No,
Peter Bondra, Patrick Stefan.
not Stefan. Yeah, Stefan. He's not.
Yeah.
He doesn't have
Yeah.
a non-goal to his name at all.
Scott McEachern. I forget his name. That's it, dude. So
hold on, I'll find it. Hold on, I'm looking at the final roster. Not Stewart, not Cormier.
I'm trying to think. Was Dustin Byfuglien the last?
Stewart, Welch, Kujala.
Was Dustin Byfuglien the last active?
Oh, that's right. Patrick Rissmiller was on this squad too. Was it? Maybe it is Jim Slater that I'm thinking. Oh, Brian Little. That's who I'm thinking.
Little. Yeah,
that's who I'm thinking.
He wasn't a captain, but yeah.
I thought he was a captain. Yeah, Burmistrov. Remember Alex Burmistrov?
The NHL doesn't. Anyway,
well, neither does Nigel Jaws, but that's fine. Radek Dvorak, also a former Coyote.
Yeah,
on that as well. Holy cow!
Yeah, him and Radim Verbata were two underrated players for the Coyotes.
Really, Verbata I wanted for a couple of offseason acquisitions, but anyways,
the Coyotes, kind of in the early 2010s were pretty decent. I put the Chicago Blackhawks. The scandal afterwards, I think, kind of puts them in this conversation. Obviously,
I would agree.
Knowing what we know now, but also what a weird way to end a Stanley Cup drought, not knowing if that goal was in or not. Like Patty Kane was the only one to score that.
Right.
So kind of interesting. 2011.
I watched that game in 2010 against Philadelphia, and I actually originally thought it was in.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until like they showed replays and they were like, where the hell is the puck? And I'm like,
yeah,
wait, did I see that right? And sure enough, it's like, yeah, that did go in. It went 5-hole. Anyways.
So we're getting into my high school years now, 2011, Vancouver and Boston. How about this series? That hit Aaron Roma, Nathan Horton completely changed this series.
Yeah.
Because Vancouver was pretty much in the driver's seat until this power play and subsequent. Yep. But I remember that Nathan Horton, geez, what an unfortunate end to his career that they had. But Boston, Tuukka Rask was actually a part of that team, and Tim Thomas. You remember Tim Thomas and his remember when you
want to know some dumb stats? Every home team in that series won except for Game 7.
Did you
there you go. Have fun.
What used to be the remember the commercials that Tim Thomas used to be in?
Oh,
was it Discover, where it was like the cab driver who like had pictures of Tim Thomas?
Was that Enterprise?
Oh, it might have been.
I think it was Enterprise.
Those were so cheesy.
I think it was Enterprise. Well, it's the NHL in the early 2000s. They were terrible. So
yeah, but
bad marketing directing. We'll put it that way.
What an interesting career Tim Thomas had. 2012, the LA Kings. How about this? Obviously as an 8 seed, dude, they walked all over the Vancouver Canucks.
They walked over a lot of people.
Yeah, it was 4-1 in that. A name that was on this team that was not on the 2014 2 years later. Can you guess what name I might mention? And it had nothing to do with his hockey play. Defenseman.
Oh, shit.
Still plays international hockey.
Give me a second. You're talking about for the Kings?
Yeah.
Oh, for God's sake.
Actually was a really good player for them. Had a domestic violence dispute.
Slava
Voinov, yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was an integral part of that series. So kind of interesting. The Kings, the first 8 seed, I believe, to win a Stanley Cup.
Correct, they were. And didn't they, it was 4-1, didn't they sweep the second round?
Oh, I don't have the second round up, unfortunately.
I thought they only lost like 2 or 3 games in the entire preliminary rounds.
They beat Vancouver handily 4-1 in the first round, which Vancouver, I believe, won the West that year. I mean,
they were the President's Trophy winner, if I recall, that year.
Yeah. So 2013, Chicago versus Boston, 2 goals in 36 seconds. Stu Bickle and then David Bolin. Of course, Stu Bickle now I forget what does Stu Bickle have again. He has MS, I think.
Is it MS?
I don't want to get this wrong, so I want to look it up here. But this was kind of the time where Chicago and LA kind of went back and forth, because the next year Alec Martinez played hero twice, because that was the year that
against the Drivels.
Well, first the Kings were down 3-0 against the San Jose Sharks, and the Kings came back.
Yep.
And then Alec Martinez scored in Game 7 against Chicago, and then scored in Game 5 against the Rangers. to take that. Do you remember where you were when you were watching that game? Because that's I don't think that goal gets a lot of love for how sick it was, especially on home ice.
Yeah, no, I think I was at home watching that, and that was a sick goal. That was sick.
Yeah, just a nice little setup, and I mean that's a pure hockey play too.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Was it Stu Bickle? I can't find it, unfortunately. So if someone knows in the comments, definitely let us know. I think it was Stu Bickle. Oh, no, Brian Bickle. That's what I'm thinking of. Brian Bickle.
Yes. You mean that cross crease setup from Taves?
Yeah.
That was Brian Bickle.
Yeah, it was Brian Bickle, and then Dave Bolin scored the game winner half a minute later. Yes. It was MS though for Brian Bickle. So
really? Oh,
yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah. So he's kind of an interesting little story on YouTube.
Well, that makes more sense because you said Stu. I'm like, Stu's fine.
Yeah, Stu Bickle. Yeah, so he's a former Gopher, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Stu Bickle. Yeah. As I say, a lot of names going in. I didn't have anything until about 2017. Not so much the Stanley Cup final, but remember that Ottawa team that was in 2017 that was that defensive, boring style of play, and it took until double overtime Crosby to Kunitz to advance them to the Stanley Cup final.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I had that one. 2019, the Blues go from last to first in the same season. And then head to a Stanley Cup final, Game 7. Nick, I didn't mention it, but it was earlier on. When was the last? That's the last Game 7 in a Stanley Cup final we've had.
Sure.
When was the last one before that?
From 2017
Mm-hmm.
or 18? Ooh. Give me a second. 2009?
A little bit later. It was actually 2011, Boston, Vancouver.
That's what it was. Damn it.
Yeah,
in Vancouver when the riots happened. Holy shit.
Yep. But you did have that right. The Detroit Pittsburgh series, and actually 2004, 2003, 2004, and 2006, 3 straight years were all Game 7s actually. So we were kind of spoiled in that stretch. And then at the end, of course, Tampa has absolutely been a wagon in 2020 and 2021. But beyond that, how about the fact that they might be the only team in history to win a Stanley Cup final with no fans? Basically.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, thank COVID, but anyway.
Yeah, kind of an interesting rundown. But really, you look at the transition, right? You had the late 90s where you had the Detroit dominance and the Avs were kind of in there, New Jersey, Anaheim. Then you throw some oddballs in there, Tampa, Carolina, then Pittsburgh and Detroit, kind of come in there after Anaheim. Then it was Chicago and LA, then Pittsburgh, throw Tampa in there at the end. But we've seen a change, obviously, in the game of hockey. How have these champions changed to you? How, not only with the game of hockey, has the idea of how or what it takes to win a Stanley Cup over 8, 9, 10 weeks or 2 months, has that changed?
I mean, yeah, but you have to go back to the 80s to really find your answer. Because if you look at the 80s, it's almost like today's NBA super teams. When you had Messier, Gretzky, Yari Curry, Grant Fuhrer, just name a few, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that nowadays. You have an influx of talent. And to me, what makes a championship team is A, speed, B, balance in terms of the depth has to be able to contribute, and C, I mean, it's always been there, but I think now more than it's been goaltending. So I think you're seeing that the eventual Stanley Cup winner in the last decade or so, you have to be good at all 3 positions to really be able to take it home. And you can't be this Superman like you were back in the day with, again, Gretzky, because everybody should know that name to kind of carry you through. You have to have skill at all 3 positions in order to win it.
Yeah, I think the change with the Fly Zone NHL too, where you had this kind of mix of skill until 2010, and then you had like the Bruins and the Kings coming in, and they were kind of some heavy physical teams still in those times. And then you really got to the Penguins and the Capitals. Don't forget, Ovi got his first and only cup. And you had some skill that kind of moved towards that pace of play sort of thing. And then the St. Louis Blues did have their series with the Bruins as well too. But it's been an interesting transition. I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to add on some of these Cup finals? Of course, you've been alive a little bit more than I have, so you have a couple more that are maybe in
10
the
more years
memory bank as well. The last Canadian team to win, do you know what year that was?
93.
93, the Canadiens.
Montreal.
Yeah, and then the Rangers, and followed by the Devils.
Yep.
You know, so of course, a couple of back-to-backs for the Penguins in 91 and 92, under different coaches as well, which is kind of an interesting thing. But yeah,
I think honestly, the big thing that I've seen, and it's been the evolution of the game, right, Noah, is that for a Stanley Cup final winning team, and especially now, I think the most recent changes is how the defensive player has evolved, right? Where it's, you know, they're not the Scott Stevens like they were in 04 or 03, where you can't cut across the middle without really just praying that you'll live through it. It's more about, you know, puck possession. It's about transition. It's about speed, offensive skill, and offensive contributions, while still being able to use your angles and your skating to keep things to the outside. But it's less of a physical brand of hockey, more of the IQ brand of hockey. Yeah. And a lot of that is stemming from the defensive end and the two guys manning the blue line.
And the rare exception, you know, like your Andre Vasilevskis and stuff, but the days of, you know, your Marty Brodeurs and guys like that who are playing 60, 65 games and then going through an entire playoff run after playoff run, those days are long gone. You've seen how many goaltenders have been used, second and even some third string options throughout this Stanley Cup playoffs in particular. Right. You know, the 1A, 1B tandem is becoming a very important part of the process, unless you're Dean Evison. You know, so... So, you know, there's a lot of things that I think have really changed that go through there. But, you know, it's interesting when you look back at some of the historical moments. I think that it's easy to look back, especially with, you know, the golden era of the WCHA too. You look back to the early to mid 2000s when the Fly Zone NHL kind of came out. I think it's easy to attribute that as maybe kind of a golden time in the NHL too, where you just had, you know, Sidney Crosby and Ovi were young and they were coming into the league and the game was changing. The shootout was introduced. We loved it at first and now we hate it, you know.
I still find it fine.
Yeah, you know,
better than a tie. I'm sorry. It's better than a tie.
It's better than a tie. We got to have the OTs be 10 minutes though. If you put the OTs 3-on-3 at 10 minutes, the odds of many games getting to that point,
happen.
I think, well, yeah, but I think it goes down quite a bit.
Still have a tie. I don't know.
No, I'm saying a shootout after 10 minutes. Like,
the thing is that
it's a player safety issue is why they do it.
I know. And at the end of it, it's the regular season. The league doesn't want to deal with that. Anyway, I'm just spewing nonsense, but sure.
So speaking of nonsense, is there anything else you want to talk about on the show today?
Let me think.
Yeah. I'm trying to look at our schedule here. I think we should have a normal Sunday release coming up for the next 2 weeks, actually, I think. So,
yeah, I guess if anything, for the hockey fans that are out there, don't be that Rangers douche.
Oh, yeah, geez.
But
go Rangers, though, right?
Right. So it looks like, too, at least the little video that we saw, I'm sure there was chirping back and forth, but isn't that the kind of the fun of being a hockey fan, is you get your chirps in, but then you just like, all right, let's both grab a beer over there and let's enjoy being hockey fans.
This goes back to the same conversation we had when that North Dakota fan pushed the Omaha fan down.
And again, it was a 20-year. For those who didn't follow, a 28-year-old from Staten Island was arrested and charged with multiple counts, including harassment, battery, assault, you name it, and also has been banned for life, apparently at all MSG properties, including Madison Square Garden, which, as our friend Ryan Stieg from the MNCAA podcast pointed out, how the hell do you enforce that? Yeah. Great question, especially I'm sure that the list at MSG is probably lengthy. So I don't know. But yeah, don't be that guy. Hockey fans, agree to disagree. In fact, if anything, that's why I think hockey fans are so great. They're passionate. They love their squad. But at the end of the day, you don't need to cheap shot some guy leaving the arena after your team loses, especially on home ice. I get it. It's tough. But any sport, that's just uncalled for. No need for that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. We're taking a look. I'm guessing the Game 7, if necessary, is on Monday. So I'm trying to take a look. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be smack dab in the middle of the Stanley Cup final round, I think, for our next show, which should come out on Sunday the 19th. If that changes, definitely take a look and we will let you know, I should say, at Warming House Den. Other than that, Nick, I don't think we have anything else. So I think it's time to sign off here just after 12:30 in the midnight hour. For Nick Maxon, I'm Noah Grant, and we will see you soon in the den.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Patrice!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL!
Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.